All right, 2 strategies for creating retirement income. That's what I want to go over today on the Your Financial EKG YouTube channel. I'm going to give you 2 strategies that you can look at when creating retirement income. And then I'm going to talk about what my preferred method is when I'm building out retirement income plans for clients. All right, so when you get into retirement, there's not this simple just give me my retirement income, right? There's Social Security that's going to get paid out, and you want to make sure you have a plan on when you're going to take Social Security. You might have retirement income coming off of your investments, and so you need to know when's the right time, what's the right approach, what are the tax implications for when I'm taking retirement income off of my investments. And then there's also things like, what about the timing of everything? Like, should I take it at 55? Should I take my retirement income at 60? You know, how long is this retirement income going to last? So let's talk about 2 strategies today for creating retirement income. And then let's go through how you can implement those into your retirement plan. All right. So the first approach when creating retirement income is called the bucket approach. Now, the bucket approach sounds just like it sounds. It's a bucket. And basically what you're doing with retirement investments is you're segregating those retirement investments into buckets. You're putting certain types of investments into buckets, and you're basically going to drain those buckets over time. You're going to drain those buckets, and you're going to use that retirement income to live off of. And the buckets that are stretched out the longest is the income that you're going to use last. And the buckets that are closer to you are the ones that you're going to use first. Now, you know, there's a lot of good information on YouTube. There's pros, there's cons to the bucket strategy. And so I want to go through why you would use the bucket strategy, who would use the bucket strategy, and how you would go about doing that. So I want to let me pull up the whiteboard here. Mike S., what's up, man? How are you? Thanks for joining the live stream. Let me show you how the bucket approach works. And let me pull up this other screen here. Here we go. All right. So when we're talking about the bucket approach, hold on, let me make sure this is working right. Again, I'm a newbie to all this, guys. Here we go. All right. When we're talking about bucket approaches, oh no, what happened to my pen? There we go. Woo. All right. I thought I lost it. Okay. So when we're talking about bucket strategy, so this is the bucket approach. You're basically going to have 3 distinct buckets, and those 3 distinct buckets are going to have investments in them. And as you put investments in those 3 distinct buckets, you're thinking in your mind, okay, when am I going to take retirement income out of these buckets? And the type of investment that goes into your bucket, the time horizon for that is determined on the type of investment that you put in the bucket. So for instance, if this is your first retirement bucket, if this is number 1, this is 2, and this is 3, you're not going to, if you're going to use this first bucket for retirement income, if you're going to use that initial, you're not going to put any kind of illiquid investments into this bucket because you're going to be using that for retirement income right away. So you might not put in there, you know, like an annuity or a real estate investment trust, or you're not going to put any kind of growth mutual funds or growth ETFs in there because those are more longer term when it comes to your investing. So in your first bucket are going to be things like short-term bonds. Man, I've really got to practice this writing on YouTube thing. Short-term bonds, CDs, money market funds, you know, treasuries, cash, just anything that you can get to rather quickly. Now, this would be your bucket that I call your freedom bucket or your emergency fund. So this is going to be things where you can just get to it as soon as you want to. And it might be the bucket that helps you bridge to buckets 2 and 3. And you're not going to earn a whole lot of interest in this bucket. There's not a whole lot of interest. I mean, obviously bond rates have come up. Interest rates have come up, which is nice. So you're seeing that appreciation in that short-term retirement income bucket, but you're not going to see a whole lot of interest at the current moment in that short-term bucket. It's really just for liquidity. Now, let me preface this. Every retirement income approach is different per individual. Okay, so your retirement income approach is going to be different from your neighbors, which is going to be different from my dad's, which is going to be different from everyone's. you've got to make the approach that's best for you. And I'm going to talk about the approach that I prefer when we talk about retirement income. But I want to talk, again, that's why I'm talking about the bucket strategy, because this is all over YouTube. It's all over any kind of financial documents. The bucket strategy is big. Now, another thing that people will put in the first bucket is sometimes they'll put in what they call SPIA annuities. It's a single premium income annuity. Basically, you give your money to an insurance company, a certain amount of money. So let's say you give it to New York Life. You give $100,000 to New York Life. Then they're going to pay you based on your age a certain amount of money for the rest of your life, or based on you and your spouse. So you could do it single or you could do it joint. That might be an approach for bucket one. So they may pay you $4,000 a year for the rest of your life. What we're trying to do is just create buckets to get us to certain places. Now, not inside of these buckets. Okay, so we're still on bucket number one, but not inside of your buckets when it comes to retirement planning is Social Security or pensions, because these are things that are going to kick on somewhere in the middle of your buckets. So you might be 55 and you're kicking on bucket one, but you've got to get to 67 for your Social Security to kick in. So for you, we've got about 12 years to go from bucket 1 and 2 to get to Social Security. And so what we're trying to do here is just to build, almost like building a ladder, not a bond ladder, but building a ladder for your income. Like, I'm going to take this first step and this is the income I'm going to use. I'm going to take this second step and this is the income I'm going to use. I'm going to take this third step and this is the income I'm going to use. Now, the thing that I don't like necessarily about the bucket approach is that a lot of times with the bucket strategies, they want the old financial thought is you basically drain the buckets of money as you go, right? So you're using a bucket of money and then there's no money left at the end of that bucket. So like if you drain all of this bucket here, it's just gone. So that's, again, what we're going to talk about. The second strategy, which I call the total return approach, which is my preferred method of creating retirement income for clients. No kicking buckets. Thanks, Mike. Good comment here. No kicking buckets, but I know what you mean. Yeah, we don't want to kick a bucket. We want to be topside for as long as possible. So the second bucket is going to be your medium to longer-ish term. So longer-ish would be like 5 to maybe 10 years, okay? And sometimes people will say 5 to 7 years. I would say 5 to 10 years. So inside of this is going to be like your dividend stocks. Man, my handwriting is terrible. Real estate investment trust, or if you own real estate or rental properties, okay, because you're trying to get appreciation. A lot of times, depending on the market, depending on if you own physical rental property, you got to put a roof on it, or you got to put a new fence in or an air conditioner. Sometimes that income that you're getting on a monthly basis goes out. What's that? Schedule E, I guess, on your taxes. It goes out to expenses. So dividend stocks, real estate, that's kind of mid to long term, because this is income that you're hoping that you have. You're really trying to set it up for the future, right? It's like a kid. You're trying to set your child up for the future. Dividend stocks, real estate, high yield corporate bonds. I would say those kind of fit in here, or what they call junk bonds, your high yield bonds. These are things where you're trying to, again, you're just trying to set yourself up for that mid to long-term range. And again, you could probably put in annuities down here if you wanted to as well. We're not going to talk a lot about that, but these are more if you're setting up for income. You're not doing an immediate annuity, which they call a SPIA. You're doing more of a longer term, maybe an income annuity or something like that. Again, what I'm trying to show you with the bucket approach is just saying, okay, which bucket am I going to use, or what investments are going to go into my bucket for retirement income, and how am I going to use these? So in this case, with the investments that we got right now, we'd be using these investments for income. Then they would go away, and then we would start kicking on these investments for income. And then eventually maybe these would go away, and the last bucket is supposed to be the bucket that survives forever. So by this time you get to your third bucket, when you're talking about retirement income planning using buckets, your Social Security's kicked on and your pensions have kicked on. So at this point, all your guaranteed sources of income, Social Security, pensions, any kind of annuities that you've got, all those are on. And now you're getting into that third bucket. So let me erase some of this. I don't know if I can clear all this. How do I do that? I'm using this new board thing with Zoom, and I'm still learning it. Okay, so let's start with the third bucket now. So the last bucket, the investments that are going to go into your last bucket, this is going to be 10 to 15 years out. So if you're retiring at 55, asking the question, can I retire at 55? You're looking at starting these investments 65, maybe 70. And the reason for that is you got to have a long time horizon for it. So inside of your third bucket is going to be like growth stocks or growth ETFs, any kind of alternative assets like commodities, things like that. These are things that you really need a long time to what I call cook. So essentially you're draining bucket 1, you're draining bucket 2, and you've got your Social Security and your pensions, and then you're starting bucket 3, and that's forever. So inside of that, obviously, could be some sort of annuity, Social Securities, pensions, and any investments that are going to be for the long term. So what are some of the cons when it comes to your bucket approach? Well, the first con that I would say with a bucket approach is that, let me get out of here. I would say the first con to the bucket approach is that you basically lose your money. And what I mean by that is you basically spend it all down. You're spending bucket 1, you're spending bucket 2, and you're spending bucket 3. To me, I don't like that, because like life changes and the markets change, and there's things that go on in the world where you might need money sooner or later, and you need to have a plan for that. What I saw when I kind of started in this industry 15 years ago were financial advisors or financial planners putting clients into bucket strategies, and then maybe the strategy that they put them in didn't work. The estimations for rates of return didn't work. And so what we saw by the time I was handling those clients is that what was planned in the past wasn't working now. And so they had to take less income because the plan didn't work. And so it doesn't give you a lot of flexibility. The bucket approach doesn't give you a lot of flexibility in making changes or making adjustments. Now, some of the pros to bucket planning, it's easy. It's easy to set up. It's easy for you as a retail person. If you're not working with a financial advisor, you can easily set up a bucket strategy. You segregate your investments by risk tolerance and time horizon, and you can easily use those for income as needed. And so it's an easy strategy, but it's one that with rising inflation and with a market that's a little bit more volatile might be tough in the sense of trying to navigate it for the long term. All right. Is the bucket half full or half empty? Another great video, Drew. Thank you, Kevin. I remembered. I always remember. All right. Now, the second retirement income strategy, the one that I prefer, the one that I want to use for my clients, the one that if we're doing a financial EKG together, and if you need a financial plan, you need a financial EKG, all the information for that is below. But when I'm putting together a plan for clients, I like to use what I call the total return approach. Now, what is the total return approach? Well, the total return approach is simple. Retirement assets are invested with a focus on diversification for various purposes. Let me say that again. Assets are invested with a focus on diversification for various purposes. So growth, stability, liquidity, and it's all done within the framework of your plan. So it's not necessarily, you're not segregating accounts and draining them. Let's say you have an IRA, a Roth IRA, and an individual account. Well, as a financial advisor, I'm looking at all of those together in a cohesive bundle, and we're building a retirement income plan based on all of those three together. Let me give you a good example. I've got a client, and her name is Margaret, and Margaret needs $1,500 a month to live off of out of her retirement investments, okay? So she has Social Security. Her husband was in the military, so they have a pension through the military, but they need an extra $1,500 a month off of their retirement investments. She has an IRA with me. She has a Roth IRA, and she has a brokerage account. So all three different tax classifications, all three different types of investments, right? An IRA is pre-tax money. When money comes out of her IRA, she pays ordinary income tax on that. She has a Roth IRA. A Roth IRA is post-tax. So she's already paid the taxes on that money. So when she takes money out of her Roth IRA, it is considered tax-free. And then she has a brokerage account or an individual account, a TOD account, whatever you want to call it, a taxable brokerage account. Money can go in, money can go out. There's taxes on capital gains, and there's taxes on dividends, and there's taxes on interest. Okay. So when we started taking out $1,500 a month from her retirement investments, we didn't make the assumption to just take it out of this investment and then drain it, and then take it out of the Roth IRA and drain that, and then leave the brokerage account. How we set it up was we're taking $800 out of the IRA, we're taking $300 out of the Roth IRA, and we're taking $400 out of the brokerage account. And all those investments together, and let me say this about Margaret. Margaret is over the age of 72, so she has to take a required minimum distribution out of her IRA, which is why we're taking the bulk of her money out of the IRA. And so with Margaret, we are using a total return approach to her investments. We're not just saying we're going to use this investment for this long, it's going to be gone, this one's going to be gone, and this one's going to be gone. We're saying, okay, all of these together are going to work in conjunction with your Social Security and with your pension, and all of those are going to pay you retirement income over your lifetime. And based on market assumptions, based on rates of return and low and inflation rates, this should last forever. And so the total return approach is really trying to say, how do we take all of our investments and cohesively pay out retirement income using them as a whole? And there's really three phases to this. And let me add, great question. Let me put this up here first. Kevin, would each bucket be a third of the portfolio? Well, let's go back to bucket planning. It depends. So he's asking, if you have $1 million, is $333,333.33 or 34 cents, is that in each bucket? And then you drain. It depends. So if you're using, depends on what kind of investments you're using. So if the first bucket is, say, treasuries or something that's not earning a whole lot of interest, it's at 2%. Well, you might have to have a whole lot more money in that first bucket to get the income that you need based on the interest. Whereas the last bucket would have less money because it has a longer time horizon on it. And so you can put less money into that bucket knowing that I'm trying to grow that more, so that as that first and second bucket go away, that third bucket has grown for 10, 15, 20 years. And now I can use that long-term bucket. Okay. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? I hope it does. Okay. If it does, put that in the comments. So what we're trying to do with the total return approach is get away from segregating those assets into saying, okay, this is how much needs to go here, here, and here. It's more like, okay, how do we use all of these investments to pay out your retirement income? You also need to look at taxes. My guess, you also need to look, yes, taxes are a big thing. With the example I was giving you with Margaret, we're taking $800 a month out of her IRA. The reason we're doing that is because she has a required minimum distribution. She has to satisfy that required minimum distribution, or it's a 50% penalty on what you don't take. And so we need to use that IRA for the bulk of her retirement income to pay out her required minimum distribution. Now, she's 72. At 73, her required minimum distribution is going to go up. And at 74, it's going to go up. So your required minimum distribution is not a single percentage, and it's the same between now and forever. It goes up every year. So like my grandmother's 81. Well, her percentage for her required minimum distribution is in the 6s, whereas Margaret's is like 3.4. So as you get older, that RMD goes up. So when you're looking at the total return approach when it comes to creating retirement income, this gives you the flexibility to go, okay, my IRA, based on the market returns from last year, because your required minimum distribution is based on the value of your IRA on 12/31 of the previous year. So you can say, okay, based on how my IRA has grown or not grown last year, this is how much required minimum distribution I have to take out of my IRA. So with the total return approach, you can look at that and say, okay, last year I had to take out $800. Well, this year the market's down 20%. And so I only need to take out $726 a month to satisfy my required minimum distribution. So you can lower the income coming out of the IRA, and you raise up what's coming out of the Roth IRA or the broker or the taxable brokerage account, whatever one you want to use. So it gives you, I like the total return approach over the bucket strategy because you're not locking yourself in to some sort of retirement income strategy. Does that make sense? I hope it does, because what we're trying to do is we're just trying to create a retirement income strategy that fits you, that fits what you're trying to accomplish, that fits your retirement needs. Because it's not about trying to, what happens in financial planning too often is you go to a financial advisor and he tries to put like a silver bullet on everybody. And what I tell people is retirement planning is not the Pillsbury Doughboy. It's not set it and forget it. It doesn't work for everybody, right? Like if I buy Pillsbury dough cinnamon rolls in Tampa and I put them in the oven, they're going to work the same as if I buy them in San Diego or if I buy them in, I don't know, New Jersey. The cinnamon rolls are going to work the same. They're going to taste the same. They're going to look the same. But your retirement income is different based on, your work history for Social Security, your pensions for, maybe you were in the military, you served for the government, you worked in the state level, your 401ks, your IRAs, your Roth, how everything is set up. If you came to me and you had $1 million in your IRA and that was the only, you had a little bit of money in the bank and you're saying, hey, I want to retire at 55. Well, then we're going to be looking at some strategies like a 72T or trying to, delay that till 59 and a half. But if you have a 401k, we're going to be looking at things like the rule of 55, which says you can use your 401k at your current job, just as long as it's, you leave it in the year you are 55 or later. And so your retirement income plan has to fit you and where you are at. Okay. So I hope that has helped. What am I at? What mark am I? I'm at the 21-minute mark or 22-minute mark now, creating retirement income strategies for that. Remember, we have the bucket strategy and we have the total return strategy. The total return strategy is what I use when I'm building out plans for clients, or I'm building out what I call a Your Financial EKG to help people. So let me get this comment here. Kevin says, of course, Roth is awesome, but there's a percentage you should have pre-tax versus post-tax retirement accounts. For instance, 60% Roth and 40% traditional or 100% Roth. Yeah, great question, Kevin. It really depends. It depends on what you're trying to do. So if you're younger, if you're 36, I'm 36, and you're trying to save for retirement, let me just give you kind of like overall. If you're younger, 30s and 40s, 20s, 30s, 40s, and you're saving for retirement, if your job offers a 401k, use that. If they offer a Roth portion of a 401k, definitely use that. If you don't have a 401k, maybe you're self-employed or your job doesn't offer that, then use a Roth IRA. I really, really think that if we just sit here and talk as friends, that statistically in the future, taxes are going to be higher. We have a national debt of what, like 30 something trillion. I think did I just go blurry? Come on back. There we go. I'm using a new camera today. If you guys can see, it's clear. So you can actually see the sweat on my brow. It's hot here in Tampa. But we have a national debt that's $30 trillion. It's basically 60 trillion if you count in obligations like Social Security, Medicare, and things like that. And so taxes are going to have to go up. Whether you voted for Trump, voted for Biden, taxes are going to have to go up in the future just to pay down the national debt. And so if you're younger, a Roth IRA or a Roth 401k or even a taxable brokerage account is a great way to be saving for retirement, because with an IRA, with a 401k, a traditional, once you get into retirement, that money is not yours. You got $800,000 in your IRA. What is that? 30% of that, let's just say, is not yours. It's the IRS's. It's going to come out in taxes over time, whether you do Roth conversions or whether you're just taking money out and paying taxes on it. So if we can start saving early in Roth IRAs, Roth 401ks, or even taxable brokerage accounts, I'll tell you how I do myself. I save the bulk of my assets in a taxable brokerage account because it's going to be more tax preferential in the future. Yeah, I'm going to have capital gains, and yeah, I'm going to pay dividends, and yeah, I'm going to pay interest. I'm going to do that every year. But if I'm saving money into an IRA or into a solo 401k, because we have that at Pearl Wealth Group, then if I'm saving the bulk of my assets into there, when I get to retirement, I'm gonna pay a ton of taxes, and taxes are not gonna go down. You're gonna pay more taxes in retirement than when you are working. And so you need to be looking at vehicles that will help you save on taxes in the future instead of how much can I save now? It's easier in your 20s, 30s, and 40s to say, how can I adjust my tax withholding on my income now to save in tax efficient vehicles than to get to 50 and 60 and do Roth conversion strategies. I mean, if you've seen any of my videos on the channel, we do Roth conversion strategies for clients. It's something that we offer within our Your Financial EKG. But along with that, when we're doing those strategies, I'm like, hey, this is how much in taxes you're going to have to pay over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years to get this money out of IRA, out of 401k into Roth IRA. And so if we can do that up front, that's going to be a whole lot better for us in the future. Okay. Kevin, great question. How should we be saving for retirement? So when we're creating retirement income, if you're younger, you want to be thinking, let me say, if you're even in your 40s, early 50s, you want to be thinking, especially if you're doing the total return approach, you're saying, I'm using all of these investments for my retirement income. You might be thinking, okay, how do I want to structure these for the future? How do I want to structure this? Do I want to continue to keep putting into my 401k as much as I am? You want to put in enough to get your match. Always put in enough to get your match from your company. But do I want to start putting money into a Roth IRA, into a taxable brokerage account? You are allowed to do that. If your income falls below the income limit, you can put money into a 401k and a Roth IRA, just as long as your income falls below that income threshold. And I don't know it off the top of my head right now live. I have a tax cheat sheet around here somewhere that I can cheat off of. But there's those income limits for investing in Roth IRAs, things like that. So you really want to kind of start thinking, how do I structure this? It's one of those things that I go through with a lot of my clients is at this point, for instance, I have a client who's retiring. He's retiring in his he's going to be 50. He's retiring in his late 40s, he's going to be 50. And we're looking at it and we're saying, okay, how are we structuring our investments today so that we can take out income for the next 9 or 10 years? And I'm doing a video on this that'll come out very soon. How can we structure our investments for the next 8 or 9, 10 years so we don't have to use a 72T, we don't have to get a 10% penalty? And so that's some of the things you really want to be thinking about when you're creating your retirement income plan. Let's see, Kyle, here's your question. Hi, Drew, I really enjoy the live stream saying, I'm planning on early retirement. What would you recommend, 401k Roth or taxable brokerage account? Assume I'm already maxing out HSA, great, Roth IRA, and 401. So 401k as a normal right now is what you said, 401k as a normal. So here's what I would recommend. Again, it kind of goes back, Kyle. I don't know if you could shoot in your age real quick into the comment section, that would help. So again, if you're younger, if your options are obviously max out that HOA, HOAs, HSA. The HSA is great. Again, it's tax-free going in, it's tax-free going out if you're using it for medical services or approved medical things. HSA is awesome. Healthcare expenses are growing at 7% per year. So if you can have a bucket of money that's tax-free to use for healthcare, that's awesome. Roth IRA and 401. Again, as long as it's not going to hurt you on taxes, I would use the Roth IRA and I would use the Roth 401k if that's available to you. Okay, I just lost my... Come on, camera. Come back. There we go. All right. Again, new camera, working on it. So if you're younger, I would like to see 34. So Kyle, great question. So yeah, Roth IRA, Roth 401k, HSA, that's where I would look. I would really try to do that going forward. Now, here's the thing. Here's a little tip for you, Kyle. Look at your taxes from last year. If you put money into a 401k or if you put money into an IRA, then you got a qualified deduction, or you got a deduction on your taxes for doing that. I mean, you didn't pay taxes on that income because it became pre-tax income, right? So if you put money into a 401k and you broke even or you got a refund last year and you change it and you put money into a Roth 401k or a Roth IRA and you don't put any money into pre-tax, you need to talk to your CPA or your tax accountant or call me or your financial advisor to say, how's this going to hurt me on taxes? Because now you're eliminating that income that was not seen last year, right? It was a deduction or qualified deduction. Now it's going to show up on your tax return. So if you have $100,000 and you put $5,000 in a 401k, you had $95,000 of taxable income. Well, now you're going to have $100,000. So you want to see, you don't want to get hurt on taxes doing that. You might have to adjust your withholding, right? You might have to change your W-2, pay a little bit more tax now off your W-2 to be able to put money into the Roth 401k and the Roth IRA. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Good question. So again, when we're thinking about creating retirement income, we want to be looking at how are our investment structured. So for Kyle, he's 34. He's already thinking about it. I want to retire early. I want to put money into a Roth IRA, a Roth 401k, because I want that money tax-free when I get to retirement. Great question. Great. Oh, thanks. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Kyle. High five. Boop. From where you're at there. Okay, so I hope this has helped creating retirement income. I wanted to jump on here. Summers are always fun for me because they're a little slower because people are vacationing. So I wanted to be able to jump here on live streams as much as possible going forward, because come the fall, come the winter, it gets crazy. And we don't have as much time to do live streams because it is nuts around the office and around here. So again, thank you so much. If there's other questions, I'll hang on for like 30 more seconds. But if not, again, thank you so much for watching the live stream. Make sure you subscribe, you like, follow. We have Facebook. We're on LinkedIn. Just Google Pearl Wealth Group. That's the business name for Facebook. We put a lot of great information on Facebook and on LinkedIn. So if you have any of those, I don't know if people have Facebook anymore, but I'm told we need a Facebook page for our business. So like us on there and go on LinkedIn. I do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. Love LinkedIn. I think it's a great community. Connect with me. Look for Drew Blackston on LinkedIn and just connect with me. I put out some stuff in my connections as well on there. So again, thank you guys so much. You guys have a great rest of your day. God bless. Bye-bye.